So there I was at Disney Lorcana Challenge Las Vegas getting ready to commentate a game. I took a look at the colors that each player was playing to kind of get my head right and figure out what the match might look like. One of the players, Clara Cyr, was playing a Amber Emerald deck, and of course I thought this is the Amber Emerald discard that we've seen all over the place that won Toronto and that I was kind of expecting to see. But once the game started, Clara started dropping cards that completely surprised me, and it turns out this was not the standard list. This was a Hyper Aggro Amber Emerald list, and I just knew that after the tournament I had to find time to talk to Clara about her deck list, her lines of play, her first 4 turns, her win condition, how she play tested for this tournament, etc. And I'm super excited that I get to dive in with you all. Let's get to it.
Hello, my name is Clara Cyr. I have been playing TCGs such as Magic for more than 10 years and hopped in Lorcana since the beginning. And I'm happy to announce that I've been invited to the Nationals.
So excited to see you invited out of Lorcana Challenge Las Vegas. So out of Disney Lorcana Challenge Vegas, you brought in this Lemon Lime Hyper Aggro deck. Why did you choose this deck into this meta?
I knew there was 3 big decks. The Ruby Sapphire, Ruby Amethyst, and Amber Steel. And Hyper Aggro is really good against the first 2, and not so much against the third one. And I was really gambling on the fact I wouldn't be getting a lot of Amber Steel and getting under all the other decks. That happened, and why that deck particularly is I know I can be on the driver's seat with that deck in many situations. So I was comfortable, I knew what to do, and yeah.
That's awesome. So did you design this deck yourself or adapt it from somewhere? And how did you go about designing it, testing it, and modifying it?
Well, it came from both experience and net decking. Because I believe you got to see what other people are playing to give yourself an idea. But you have to test and do stuff to like experiment like a mad scientist. And with that said, the first time I tried this deck was at the Sunday competitive event at Toronto, and I had the same idea but with shifts targets such as Rockstar Stitch, Kita, and Pegasus, and it didn't provide such board control as my version in Las Vegas, and that key was crucial.
Interesting. So so what did you say was crucial? The board control, the Kita?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a key difference between shifting on the queen and shifting on the Kita. So if you shift on the queen, you can lower the power of an opposing character, and you can buff the power of your own characters, doing effective challenges this way. Kita, what it does, it's only diminishing the power of everybody. So yes, you can quest freely, but you're not competing for board control, and that can hurt you like 1 or 2 turns after.
In a bit. So this is a Hyper Aggro deck. It's meant to be very aggressive and to win quickly. So what does your ideal first 4 turns look like?
Ideal first 4 turns will be me putting stuff on the board, my opponent not competing for board control so much. I had starting games really crazy, such as Daisy turn 1 and 2 other 1-drops 2 lore turn 2, and with some key protective cards on turn 3, and my opponents were like, yes, I'm just scooping on turn 4. If it is not only that, it depends on the matchup that you have, and it would be to have at least 1 to 2 key answers to what your opponent has. If you know if it is Ruby Sapphire, you want to have that Ursula in hand to put down on the board before be prepared. Same thing with Ember Steel, you want to prevent then came along Zeus or grab your sword from happening, stuff like that.
So, so with that being said, there are obviously some key cards you said that you're looking for in particular matchups. So what does your mulligan strategy look like? What cards are you generally always keeping? What cards are you sending away? And what cards are you looking for in certain key matchups?
In my first hand, I try to have as much inkables as possible. So that means all my spicy cards, that such as Tinkerbell, Chernabog, or specific 1-drops that I don't necessarily want to see. And most of the time, Baloo, I don't want it in my opening hand. I want to see him like 2-3 turns down the road. That's amazing, but not on the first hand. So that gives me flexibility. So let's say if we're competing for board control, I will try to have a shift line of either the Queen or Pegasus to be able to get the control on the board for at least the 4 or 5 first turns, or try to sneak extra lore with the Pegasus line or Baloo or Darnold Duck down the line with my questers. Other than that, I would try to see if I can get a Clarabelle shift line against decks such as Ruby Amethyst, or even Ruby Sapphire. That can be really helpful. Also, disruption tools such as Ursula is really key. If I can get one in almost every game against decks that have impactful songs, I'd be happy to see it. There's that. Having also a lot of 1-drops in the beginning to do the 1-drop first turn, 2 1-drops on the second turn, and then having Clarabelle to draw a card. That can be another thing I'm looking in my mulligan. So as you can see, there's a lot of variables that you can get, and there's a lot of subtleties. I need to factor in the style of my opponent, cards that I know that they have, and adapt my style of play to what they have. So it's not necessarily like the Hyper Aggro is not like, oh yeah, you just put characters on the board and quest and quest and quest. No, every decision counts, because as soon as you give the control of the board to your opponent, it's over.
Yeah, that is fascinating, because I do think when you think about Hyper Aggro, oftentimes you think of exactly what you just said. People get coached to just put everything you can on the board, turn them sideways, and try to win as fast as possible. But you have, quite a few cards in here. Not only, as you mentioned, and you've mentioned most of them already, the Queen Shift line, Kit Cloud Kicker, Ursula Deceiver, cards which interact with your opponent or your opponent's board. And I watched you during the tournament take a more measured approach sometimes and focus a little bit on board control or disrupting your opponent's strategy rather than just straight questing. And so it's fascinating to hear you say that, because I do think that flies in the face of how a lot of newer players are taught to play Hyper Aggro.
Yeah, indeed. And you just mentioned Kid Cloud Kicker. It is a key card against the Flynn Sisu or Flynn Malamim Fox lines in Ruby Amethyst, or even with other types of matchup, especially I remember a game I've done against Lemon Lime Discard Under the Sea, where I kept bouncing a 1-drop queen to prevent them from shifting on the 5-cost queen. That would have enabled them to sing Under the Sea. And every turn I had a kit. Sorry. And just continued questing slowly until I just pressured lore near the 20. So it shows that in and out of itself, Kid Cloud Kicker is a 2/2 quest for 1 that bounces a character with power 2 or less. It's not that much, but when you know how to use it, it's beautiful.
It's amazing. So we talked kind of about the first few turns here, and the idea is you win fairly quickly, because generally against most decks, inevitability is going to be with a lot of the other decks in the meta, because they're more control oriented. So let's say a game goes longer, and you're in turn 8 or 9, and your opponent has a lot of their removal answers available. What are you trying to do in the end game to kind of hang in there and close things out?
Yeah, I'm trying to find answers, especially the Clarabelle lines, allowing you to draw a card if you have less cards than your opponent, or drawing up to what your opponent has in their hand. It is especially good because I know all the cards I can get, I can put back the pressure and telling my opponent, you have to answer something. And it is especially true with the Chernobog line, because Hyper Aggro, we have a lot of characters. My deck is 100% characters, and at some point you're gonna get 10 characters in your discard pile, and you're just gonna play Chernobog for free, and your opponent's gonna have a lot of trouble dealing with that.
What are your good matchups and bad matchups with this deck?
Good matchups is simple answer would be good matchups against anything red. Bad matchups against anything steel, and the reason why is their removal package. So red removal package tends to be later on in the game, where I have already established my presence, my lore count and everything. Still, let's just say that Ember Steel could sing off of a Cinderella 1-drop, Let the Storm Rage On, and that hurts. Lemon Lime Discard Under the Sea is tricky. If I'm not careful, I get wiped really easily. Emerald Amethyst. This deck is really challenging. It's because it's a mid-range deck, or it's like an aggro mid-range, where they can challenge your board presence better than what you can do most of the time, and they have access to tools such as Lyle that imposes reckless to your characters, and furthermore, you're losing lore every time they lose a character. So all the advance that you got, you get drawn back. I faced one of the top players playing green steel in the Swiss round and got 2-0. I was really hoping to get in the final rounds to face them, because even though it's green steel, I get quick enough with some disruption package that is tailored to what they have. I think I would have gotten a chance.
I actually missed what you lost to in the top 16.
Oh my god, yeah. I just remember, this is like a flashback that keeps
Oh no.
happening in the last few days. I got against Ruby Amethyst
Oh.
on
That
the
should-
play.
That should be favorable-ish for you though, right?
Yeah, it should have been. Like, game 1, I got the 3 Daisy in the first 2 turns with the kit, I think, 3rd turn. And my opponent was like, yeah, no, I scooped. There was nothing to do there. Second game was kind of tricky because my opponent changed his deck for the challenge to be more with, how can I say that? He had like 4 crabs, 4 Elsa rush evasive, instead of the usual Sisu and Maui package. I'm talking about Christian Pelayo.
Yep.
So he got me good with the crabs, and there was one fatal mistake. I had a queen shift, and Pegasus I just shifted on the 4th turn, and I could have challenged his Merlin crab. That would have been the best play because I would have denied him the possibility to bounce it back or to challenge one of my characters with it, providing a challenger +3 to someone else. And that happened with an Elsa rush, and he took care of my both shift characters, and it was like, oof, yeah, I lost that game.
What? So this lemon lime hyper aggro deck is definitely not a popular deck in the current meta. It's not in the top, 6, 7, 8 or so, for sure. What advantage do you think you have bringing kind of an off meta spicy deck into a challenge like this?
One, people can't know in advance what I'm gonna play. I rewatched the commentary for my first match on stream.
Yeah, that
And
was
And I remember you said, like, oh yeah, this is like lemon lime discard. It was like, no, it's not. And this big surprise, like I was counting on that reaction, not only from anyone watching the game around, but also my opponents. Giving that, if I put first turn 1, let's say a queen, people can say, oh yeah, I could be like lemon lime discard, and try to arrange their inking process in that manner. And I could wreck their plan the turn after putting like Daisy or something like that.
My closing question is always, why is lemon lime hyper aggro good?
Oh, yeah, lemon lime hyper aggro is good because you can, with the right lines, you can pack a punch at the beginning, assert your dominance on the board, and get all the lore that you need, and then you can sit on it and be like, at 16, 17, 18, putting a character and saying, yeah, your turn. Oh, I'm at 18, yep, you need to answer it right now or I win. And you don't care if your opponent is catching up to you at this point. So it really shines in the 6 first turns. And it can still win after the 7th, 8th turn. What I like about Lemon Lime Aggro is it forces you to think about how do I keep controlling the board and continue questing while my opponent may have like bigger characters, bigger everything than you have. So it really forces you to think.
So you mentioned that this deck was a mix of your own experience combined with net decking, but obviously you tested it and modified it yourself. How do you generally go about deck building? What are your rules and what advice would you give to people that are looking to build their own decks?
Yeah, start off with, you can start with crazy ideas. Just test something. If we take, for example, another one of my brews that is like Ember Sapphire the Queen themed deck. So what is that deck doing? It's like, yeah, you want to put a lot of characters named the Queen. Okay, yeah, sure. And all those characters are, so you try to find what is the core of the deck. So what happened with this deck is it was, okay, it's a queen, but princess singing deck. That allows you to further in the game find answers such as the world's greatest criminal mind, Let It Go, and the ramp package of How Far I'll Go. And down the line, you'll get like 6-7 queens in your discard that you can just return to your hand with Blast from your past. So this whole package is your core. And from there, you can design, you have like a 50 cards that is in your key deck. From there, you can add the cards that you want with the 10 more. The same happened with Lemon Lime. Like you have the shift lines. Usually in Lemon Lime you have 3 shift lines that you can use. And you have your aggro start package, your disruption tools, and then you have your cards, like 5 to 7 cards that are free. So in there, I was like, yeah, I'm not just like aggro player that just turn cards sideways. I want consistency. I want things to be reliable. So I put Turnabog, Tinkerbell in, and I'm always cautious. So Sven was in the mix because of that.
What is it like knowing that you qualified for the first ever Disney Lorcana North American Championship?
I had that goal since the beginning of the DLC announcement and everything. It was like, yeah, I want to make it to the national. I want to really establish myself as a competitive player out there, be recognized. I was like, okay, in Toronto, it didn't go so well. I was like, okay, yeah, getting to the ground, be like, okay, let's think. And be in Las Vegas, I was like, yeah, I want to do it. And that happening, I was just like ecstatic and couldn't believe it. And I'll be seeing a lot of people I made friends with at the nationals. I don't know how it's gonna be like. So yeah.
I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to see you compete there. Yeah, There's one of the things about these challenges too, like, going in, you meet a lot of new people, you make a lot of friends, and then as these things go on, especially going into nationals, like it's not like watching a bunch of strangers compete anymore. It's like watching a bunch of, friends or, people and that's so much more fun.
Yeah, especially this is a feeling that we get with Lorcana because of the Disney brand around it. The environment and the community is much more friendly, and I've had that discussions with friends before. It's not just other competitors, but it's friends that you get along the way that shape your path, I would say.